Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, visiting about soil health and all those good things that we're doing here on the Black Leg Ranch. I'm Jerry Doan. Our family started this ranch in 1882. My great grandfather came down out of Canada and was a Canadian citizen and came to what was then Dakota Territory and started this place. And it's 5 generations strong now, with actually the 6th. My grandkids are helping out some on the ranch here as well. So we have a lot of pride, a lot of heritage in ranching in the Dakotas, in this whole conservation soil health movement. Been involved in it a long time. We're really all about regenerative agriculture here, and I'm very excited about it because I've seen the change that it's made in our operation. And as I go through my talk today, I'll reference that and tell you some of my experiences and stories. And I'll also talk about our family, because our family is a big part of this operation. One of my major goals is to turn this ranch over in better shape than I got it to my kids that have come back to ranch here. So with that, I think we could get started and get on into it, and I'll fill in the gaps a little more about our operation and myself and what we do as we move on. All right, well, as I said, I'm sure glad to be here today and visit with you about regenerative agriculture and soil health. And the title of my presentation today is Years of Building Soil Health While Stacking Enterprises and Improving the Profitability for the Next Generation. That's something we're all about here, and we feel pretty strong about that. This is just a slide here of the ranch as you come into our place. Again, I said it was started in 1882, and we're pretty proud of that, and have a lot of pride and heritage in that. Just a quick slide here. This is about 1889, and those of us in the Dakotas and across the whole Western United States, I guess, can relate to this. That's a picture of the sod house. You know, we think we have problems nowadays, and we think things are challenging, but I can't imagine what it was like to live in a sod house in Dakota Territory and trying to put food on the table and stay warm, and the trials and the tribulations they had. And I think about that a lot as we go through these trying times. We're in trying times in the United States right now, but I think it helps us reflect back to what the people that came before us went through to build this great country. And I think we should be reminded of this. This is a picture of our family here, and I'm standing in the back, and my wife Renee is there with me. She is the backbone of our operation, like most places, and we just need to be honest about that, I guess. But we're a little different, I think, than a lot of places, in that I've got 4 kids, and they all went off to college across the country and worked other places and did things, but all had a yearning to come back to North Dakota and be involved in agriculture. My daughter Shanda's on my left. Shanda's not directly involved in the operation, but she does hunt, or does help with the hunting operation, and her and her family and grandkids help out with branding and all that sort of stuff. So she's very involved in other things. Her husband's a true cowboy, but he's a banker, and so, but they are involved. Then my oldest boy is seated in the front of her, and his name's Jeremy. Jeremy is much like me, that went to North Dakota State University and always had the goal of coming back here, and he's in charge of the hunting operation, and they all work together, but we do have to where they are in charge of their own entity, so to speak, and I'll talk about that more as we go on today. But and then Jay is seated in the front on the other side of him. Jay was the oddball that didn't go to a land grant institution, went to Arizona State and has a business degree, and never expected him to come back because he lived in the fast lane. But he came back as well, and he's in charge of the whole agri-tourism and brewery, and which has created some chaotic times, but interesting as well. And then Jace is standing in the back. Jace is the cowboy of the family that went to Montana State, still rodeos today, was on their rodeo team, and is in charge of the cow herd, the buffalo herd, and our new meats business. And so it's, I tell this story a lot because most people, when I'm out speaking, they come up to me and they're sad because they couldn't get any of their kids to come back. And if I listen to some of the folks for 10 minutes, I'll understand why they didn't come back. They're not positive at all, and we've got the same trials and tribulations and problems on this ranch that anybody else, but somehow you've got to put it into perspective, and families are a challenge, and we have our challenging times. We're trying to work through all those things, and working through a big succession plan, and all that stuff can drive you nuts. But it's so important, and I'm so blessed that to have all these kids come back and want to be involved. And for me, it created excitement again, because I was burned out. It wasn't fun anymore. And the whole regenerative agriculture segment has reinvigorated me. It's fun to watch the potential of bringing that soil health back and improving the landscape, and then finding some new niches to be profitable and improve our quality of life. And that's kind of the whole theme of this talk today. And I'll spend time talking about that more as we go through this. So that's our family. They're the ones that do all the work. I just try to keep them all from killing each other. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about goals. We're a holistic managed operation. I've been through Alan Savory's school twice, slow learner, I guess, but it did change the way I think. It did change the way we do things. We are so traditional in agriculture, and that's fine and good. We're traditional here as well, and we're proud of the tradition. But most people are really hard to step out and try new things. And other ranchers and other people will be very hard on you and criticize. And that's concerning. We're a multi-generational ranch, and that's important to us. Like I said early on, I want to turn it over in better shape than when I got it. Most of agriculture has went away from diversification, and yet we're very diversified here by these other niches and stacking enterprises that we've done. I think that's helped us keep our focus a bit. We're all about regenerating soil health. I've said it several times. I don't like the word sustainable, because why would I want to sustain something that's degraded? We've got to regenerate it, bring it back to what nature gave us. And that's on our native range as well as our cropland, and a big part of that is wildlife. And even if we have a hunting operation, so we do stack dollars on that enterprise, but even if you didn't do that, wildlife sells to the public, and it's part of our system, and we should be concerned about it. Two of the things, our goals that I always say are missed, is profitability, because we accept in agriculture that we struggle and many times can't be profitable. I don't accept that. I get it that we love what we do and all that, but if we can't be profitable, what is the sense? And so we've tried to target in on that, and we've really improved that through some of the things we're doing. Not always perfect, not always simple, but I think you can be profitable. And with that then is trying to improve your quality of life and make it so you can have fun doing it. And that's a challenge in agriculture, because you're very busy. You bring families in, you have these family dynamics of pushing and shoving, How do you balance all that? But we've got to. I've watched too many people in agriculture that absolutely hate what they're doing and yet keep doing it year after year after year after year and wonder why it's not fun. So somehow you've got to bring the fun back, and I think we can, and so we work at that. Again, not always perfect, but we work at that and try to have fun doing it. I'd like to talk, and for a lot of folks out there that are really engaged in soil health, the principles, this will be strictly review. For other folks that are tuning in that are new to this, I think it's good for both of us to review this, or if you're hearing it for the first time. But they're key, and it's increase your plant diversity. In agriculture, we tend to want to go to monocultures. Monocultures is not what nature does, and we mess up our soil health when we go to monocultures. So try to increase plant diversity where you can. And that means both on native range or pasture land of any improved pasture land, as well as cropland. Keep a living root as long as possible. Now we realize we live in the northern plains. That's a challenge when it's 20 below, but let's do that as long as we can and as much as we can. No or little soil disturbance. In our case, we've been no-till for, I don't know, closing in on 25 years, I guess. I didn't realize how important that is and what a difference we made. When I was a kid, our cropland was wheat and summer fallow, black summer fallow, that Ruth probably got some down in her country because that's where it blew to. The erosion was terrible, and we didn't understand that very well. Now, let's be honest, government programs push some of the generations into doing some of those things. Right or wrong, that was the way it was done. But we don't have erosion here anymore, or so very little that you couldn't measure it, I don't think. So again, no or little soil disturbance. In our case, it's none. You just about have to beg me to go do some little disturbance of some type, and if it has to be, it has to be, but we just don't do it. And then keep litter on the soil, and that's very important, and we'll talk about that as we move through this. And then the last thing is integrate livestock. People ask me all the time, can we build our soil health without livestock? Yes, I think you can, but it'll take you 10 times longer. Livestock were a part of the system. It's why we have we had the beautiful rangeland we did. It was from hundreds of thousands of head of buffalo that went through and basically annihilated the land almost, but didn't come back for a year or two or three. And if you read Lewis and Clark's journals, they talk about the abundance and saddle high grassland, the beauty of it all, the wildlife. And that's what we need to try to get back to. Granted, we can't go back in time and make it like the Lewis and Clark days, but we can do some management practices to definitely improve that. And livestock are key. And as we move through some of this system, and without getting political here, but I'm really very concerned when you talk about new green deals and some of the things that are being floated out there in this country, they call for the removal of livestock off the land for climate change. That would be the worst thing we ever did. You will desertify the grazing land. You will get rid of your wildlife. We will lose a big chunk of our livelihood as far as a great food product. And it would be devastating for the country. So I only make that statement because I think it's easy for people, we all want great climate, we want great water, we want all these things, but we have to keep them into perspective on what built them in the first place. And what built them was ruminant animals and a natural system that was it propagated the wildlife, the beauty, the diversity of plants. And then it provided a very nutritious protein product for all of us. And I think we need to keep that in perspective. All right. Just as we move through this, it's years of building soil health on rangeland and cropland. What I'll do here today is I'm going to go through rangeland a bit and then go into cropland and adding cover crops, and then finish off with stacking enterprises. And is my goal here, and hopefully I can get through all this and keep your interest. Planned grazing, it's not rocket science. It's basically, again, what the buffalo did. We're trying to do it with, we have to add fencing because we don't have those massive herds. It's short duration, high animal impact, long recovery periods. We've just seen tremendous difference in our rangeland when we go to that. One of the keys to this, though, for folks out there that are looking at this for the first time, or maybe you've gotten into it and are struggling a bit, in the livestock industry, if you look at any graph of the size of cattle, it goes just like, you know, at a, I don't know what the right term is. It's not straight up, but it's going at an angle up. And we've got cows that are extremely big. I will never be the one to sit here and tell you black cows are right, or green cows are right, or small cows are right, or big cows are right. I can tell you, though, as we've moved into this, we didn't have the right kind of cattle to fit the system. And our goal is to have about 1,100 pound cow. We don't have all of them at that level yet. And part of that problem is we've grown a lot of cattle in the beef industry that are high input cattle. And if you can make profit on high input cattle, God bless you, and I would never question you. But I know on our ranch, they don't work. And I'm trying to keep our inputs down and make sure we can bring the performance of the cattle up. Again, we try to get away from performance per head, and we try to look at pounds per acre, and can we add more cattle? Can we produce more pounds per acre that brings our profitability up and make this work in our system, which tries to take the inputs out, bring it back to a grass-based system. And then we fit your calving to your system. We used to calve in barns and worked our hind ends off in February and March and all that. And when I was younger, I thought it was fun, I guess. Now we calve in May and June. We calve in the hills. It's fun. Their quality of life improved. It's fun to watch them calve. It's fun to see the beauty, the good things. Yes, you have smaller calves, but you have the opportunity to put them in a system on grass and make that all work. So I can't spend a lot of time talking about that today, but I think, again, I would just challenge folks, you've got to fit the livestock to your landscape and system. This is a shot of healing fragile land, and folks that have seen me speak before, I use this picture almost all the time because when I was a kid, those hills were just on the east side of the Missouri River in southern Burleigh County, 25 miles southeast of Bismarck. That land was basically all just sand duney land, and it was fun to dirt bike in, or you could find arrowheads in there and that sort of thing. But by high animal impact, short duration, we've started to cover that land over, and it's really pretty nice to see that happen. And this is what's really unique. That's big blue stem moving up those sand hills. I did not know that was possible. I'll get people here on a tour and they'll ask me how we seeded that. And I go, oh, big John Deere air seeder. Jokingly, it was the seed bed was there. The cattle did it by, again, high animal impact, short duration. Mother Nature's got to be nice to you and provide some moisture. And boom, big blue stem, which is a good indicator plant, is moving up those slopes and covering those sand duney hills. And then you bring this diversity in. That's purple prairie clover there. You know, that's part of a diverse mix. When I first got into this, didn't know what that was. It's a legume that's helping in a healthy grass system. All of a sudden you realize that all the synergies between all those different plants that we don't maybe understand all that well, but yet they're part of a system, and really becomes fun and very, again, you start to have a lot of forage to grow some good beef to put on the table for the consumer. Just a couple of slides here on controlling things. Western snowberry or buckbrush is always a problem in the Dakotas. You can see on the left where there's a lot of it. You can see on the right where you ran a lot of cattle, and all of a sudden they've grazed it off. You take their selectivity away. And what we've seen is, you know, if you go out there season-long grazing, and I don't have the slide in here in this presentation, but I've taken a couple of pictures of other pastures that aren't on my land, and I'm not trying to be critical of anybody, but season-long grazing, they won't go into that buckbrush and they won't graze it down, and it gradually over time gets thicker and thicker, and then you either have to go in there with chemical, because generally folks don't understand you could go in there with a lot of cattle and hammer it. And what this shows on this slide is that you'll still have some Western snowberry or buckbrush there, but it's not taking over your pasture. And all of a sudden you have grass shoots that come up underneath, where in a pasture that hasn't seen rotational grazing, it'll be bare ground underneath the buckbrush, and there won't be any grass there at all. So again, by limiting the time, putting the pressure on, changing that up time-wise from year to year, that diversity will come back and you won't have those issues. Similar to this picture as well, you can see on the left where the management has allowed those forbs to come in there and virtually take over. On the right, where that's been utilized with planned rotational grazing, and you can see the difference that makes. Another secret to this, and if I live to be 900 years old, it will be the bigger challenge, is knowing when it's time to move. And that's, you can't go by the calendar, you can't go by a textbook, you've got to figure it out. And many times after we moved, I'll say we should have stayed a couple days longer, we should have moved a day earlier. So it's subjective, but you get better at that. And the thing about planned rotational grazing is you can fudge a bit, and because you're going to give them good ample recovery time, it won't hurt you as bad as if you're season-long grazing and you keep them in there and they continually select the good plants, and you get constant overgrazing and undergrazing. And you may not see it because you're out there every day, but leave for a couple of years and come back and you'll notice that you're degrading that resource quite rapidly. This picture of 74 days of rest, and I learned something, and I want to make a point of this. And you can see it's quite lush and vibrant, but we were using the nutritional balancer test out of Texas A&M, which you take manure samples, you send them in, it gives you a snapshot of what those cattle should be gaining on the forage they're eating. And we're always struggling, it seems, with getting good gains. We're using a once over system. I'm convinced a once over system is the best for range improvement. But when you want to get your performance up, it doesn't work the best at times. And so what we did was, you get into August, you've got a lot of grass there, but it's very mature. The quality's dropping down, and we were showing that our gains on these heifers were dropping off. So what we did then is went into something that had, like this pasture, was 74 days of rest, still really good recovery on it, much more lush, good material. And we were able to kick up those heifers a full pound a day in their performance. That's quite a difference. And I know I've custom grazed some yearlings. Sometimes we struggled with getting the gains on them we'd like. And part of that was, again, the cattle type wasn't right. A lot of those cattle shouldn't have been on grass. They should have went right to a feedlot. And so we struggled with that. But we learned that you can do that, but you've got to mix that up a bit and go to a twice over system later in the year, and then mix that up so you're not doing that to the same pastures every year, and you'll be able to keep up with that performance much better than you can in just a once over system. This is a shot of what, and this is a perfect shot. It doesn't always look like this, but ideally you want everything that's not grazed down on the ground. A lot of animal impact, keep that litter on the ground, and that way you've started that system over. You started the natural system of the mineralization of that going back into the soil, keeping your soil temperature down, allowing for better infiltration, all those things. So the goal is to not have a lot of stuff standing up there that's not doing you any good. Fencing's always important on these issues, and it takes a lot. We use a lot of barbed wire, a lot of high tensile fencing as well. I could spend quite a bit of time, and if my son Jace would visit with you, he hates the high tensile because, if power's off or whatever, yeah, cows respect it, but there's a place for both of them. But high tensile is obviously cheaper and has its place as well. But on our perimeter fences, we've used all 6-foot 4-wire barb and made it quite a difference so you don't have cattle out everywhere. So anyway, pipeline water systems are very important. We've run a lot of pipeline all over the ranch. This year we're in a serious drought again. Most of our water holes and dams and dugouts are all dried up. If we wouldn't have the pipeline, we'd be out of water. And so we've run shallow pipeline everywhere, and it's very good. There's lots of cost share programs out there to help folks with that. And it made quite a difference, and also a difference in the performance in the cattle. Just a quick shot of multiple tanks and high tensile wire going up to them, give a little sense of what you go through to put a system in. This is an important slide because this is Long Lake Creek that goes through our place that ends up in the Missouri River. If we like this or not, the public perception thinks we're ruining the water systems, and we better pay attention. And so what we've done in this case is fence this creek off. It doesn't mean we don't utilize it. We put a lot of cattle in there, short duration, and they're out. And then this was grazed once, but then you get this beauty. You get the beauty and the wildlife and the aquatic species in the creek. The water quality is good. And then we need to sell that to the public of what we're doing. But I think that's very important that we start paying attention, because we need the public on our side. Okay, I want to go into the cropland. It was a bit of a wild whirlwind snapshot on rangeland and grazing, but I want to go into cover crops and building soil health on cropland. Our goals, we have 3 main goals. Number 1 is to build soil health back. I wasn't sure if we could when we started this, on depleted organic matter, sandy or marginal soils that probably shouldn't have been broke up, but they were. And could you build them back? Number 2 is the biggest cost for cattle guys in the Northern Plains is winter feed costs. They kill us. And you go to the universities and they just haven't done much to study how do we reduce winter feed costs. And so could we utilize cover crops to reduce or ideally eliminate winter feed costs. And then number 3 is, can we propagate the wildlife with having shelter and a food source out there? And we've been able to do that on all 3 of those goals, and we'll talk about that as we move through this. We're using full season cover crops. I'm not opposed to cover crops after another crop. If I'm trying to grow quite a bit of biomass for winter feed, though, it's quite hard. I mean, you can do it sometimes, but our moisture is marginal after a lot of these crops. And so to do that, we've elected to use full season cover crops. We seed them in mid-June. They're warm season mixes. They're good for the nutrient cycling. Again, they're going to improve your water quality and filtration, which is a big deal. Huge for wildlife, as you might expect. Lots of nutrition in there for them, lots of protection. We integrate livestock. You're really building your soil health back, your organic matter back. What's that? Little glitch there. Okay, got her going. Works very well in a crop rotation. In our crop rotation, we really try to have all 4 crop types growing on our crops here. And sometimes that's a bit of a challenge. But when we throw in these cover crops that we have 22, 23 different species in, we cover all that. And so, again, we really try to get that diversity growing in our crop fields. And we are using no commercial fertilizer. Now, we went out and spread some a couple different times, because some think, well, you're going to really bump it up. Now, we've got several legumes in this, and when we get them nodulating and working well in these systems, I don't think you need it. Now, maybe you could pop it up a little quicker. When I've used the commercial fertilizer, I've seldom shown that it really was a benefit. And I've kind of done it first to second guess myself and see if I'm right or wrong. I'm not saying there's not times when it wouldn't work, but in general, as we try to keep these costs low, we're going without it. And hopefully with good moisture and the legumes and things that we have in the cover crops, we can get by without it. This is, and I won't spend a ton of time on this because everybody always wants, give me your mix. Folks, it's not all about the mix. It's about having a lot of diversity. This got 23 pounds in this mix. We kept the cost down to only $22 an acre. You have to play with that a little every year because some things get more expensive, so you might have to take them out. But as you can see, there's several legumes in there. There's several brassicas in there that'll go down, scavenge nitrogen, do some good things for your soil. And then for the winter grazing, I've kind of highlighted in yellow the BMR grazing corn. We've also started using a BMR Sudan cross that's a little more nutritious for cows. I really like forage collards in a mix for winter because it's like a cabbage plant without the head. Very green, stays green under the snow, clear through the winter, and the cows love them. And then the millets, and the millets work really well. So sunflowers are good. We have a little trouble here. Now this year our water all dried up, but the blackbird population, and when they go into a cover crop and it attracts them with the sunflowers, they don't just eat the sunflower, then they start taking out the millet. And so we've had to take them out of a lot of the mixes because for whatever reason, the blackbirds aren't going south as like they used to as quick. And so I just throw that out there as a caution. We had a little trouble with it. And I love sunflower in the mix. So anyway, you can play with the mixes all day long. And my key to that is a lot of diversity and keep the costs low and then work with it and see what works for you. Okay. Again, lots of diversity. This is a shot of what it looks like come summertime. Lots of diversity, very beautiful mix. And I've got soil temperature on that because, and again, if you've heard me talk around, I use this example because it was an aha moment for me. Jay Fear, our soil health specialist from North Dakota, who has done a lot for me, I think the world of Jay, and he brought a researcher here from Australia, walked out in a cover crop field in the middle of August, 95 degrees, stuck a soil thermometer in, and it was 68 degrees. And I went, aha, and it's because of this. At 140 degrees, and if you went to a conventional tilled field, it would have probably been at 140 degrees that day. All the bacteria are dead. At 100 degrees, there's only 15% of the moisture going to the plant. Well, and you saw my slide, it said 68. Well, at 70 degrees, 100% of the moisture is going to the growth of the plant. And at 70 degrees, the biologic activity is at its maximum. That was the minute I really understood what we're trying to do. Keep that soil temperature down, and all of a sudden, when we're short of moisture, we're not evaporating at all. It's going to the plant. It's giving us all that production. And also, we're getting all that biologic activity that's bringing our soil health back, creating our soil organic matter, building our own nitrogen so that we don't have to put all those inputs in. If you take nothing away from this presentation today, this is a very important point. And until you see it, it's hard to learn it sometimes. All right. I'm just going to throw out 4 or 5 options here of, we use the full season cover crop, lots of diversity. But we've also played around with some other things. This is forage barley, peas, clover, collards. Our goal in that is, even though we're trying to winter graze, you still have to have a backup plan of some hay. This puts a really good, nutritious crop together. And once we take the forage barley and the peas off, if you get some fall rains, the clover and the collards will still be there and grow, and you can get some pretty good late fall, winter grazing out of that as well. And sometimes it works really well. Other times like this year when it's dry, not so much. Mother Nature will show you who's the boss every time. We've also messed around with some perennials. It'd be nice to get this to work right and then not have to plant the cover crop every year. This happens to be Western wheat, Sizer milk vetch, pubescent wheat, Canada wild rye, and alfalfa. Our goal in this was to plant a crop that I could, again, take a hay crop off and then grow something that we could graze. It's worked really very well. And we get some really good, nutritious hay off this. And then again, Mother Nature is good to you. Get a little rain a little bit later, and you can get some really good, nutritious grazing out of that. So another option for you guys. This happens to be Sizer milk vetch seeded into grazing land. We had some old, way back when it was cropland, and then it was seeded to brome grass and not very productive over the years. And as I got into this, Jay Fear again and I sat there and looked at this. What could we do to it? And so we actually went in and seeded into the grass. We subdued it a bit with some Roundup, which I maybe wouldn't do if I did it again. I'd maybe go in and hit it really hard with cows and see if we could knock it back good enough to get by without the expense and using the glyphosate. But this Sizer milk vetch has really spread out into this. And if you're not familiar with Sizer milk vetch, it's a non-bloating legume, and it will really give you some earlier season grazing. And I just absolutely love this stuff in these pastures. And I just offered, I get a lot of questions. What can we do to rejuvenate some old improved pastures? And this might be an option for you. So we've also used ryegrass seeded. We put it in the drill when we seed oats and barley that we're gonna put up for hay, and then get some moisture. And this is what it looks like as you get towards fall, some really good grazing. So again, an opportunity, lots of different ways you can use these things as you're trying to build your soil health and find ways to graze cattle. This is grazing heifers. We actually have a SARE grant going on the ranch here with NDSU. Pretty interesting. We'll see where it goes, and they're doing some different grazing durations to see what the difference will be on soil health. So over time, maybe we'll learn something. But what I learned, we're grazing these heifers, and I've always struggled a little bit getting these heifers bred up as we go to a straight grass system. Again, as we get our cattle type, that will improve. But we went into this in September, and I took again a nutritional balancer test, sent it to Texas A&M. It showed those cattle on native range were actually, those heifers were actually just standing still, maybe even losing a little bit of weight, but not really gaining much. So we put them into these cover crops that were pretty nutritious, and they just, gosh, they put on some real good conditions. So they went into winter really in good shape. And having those cattle on there in a pretty fairly heavy animal impact is really should be good on that soil health as we move forward. Just and you can do this sort of stuff. We haven't done a lot of it, but you can use some reels and some high tensile poly wire and move them around. They actually respected it really well, and it worked better than I had anticipated in these small little plots of holding them back. You can see, but on the right where they've grazed it down, on the left they'll be going into that. Lots of litter on the ground, lots of of good things happening out there. So look forward to sharing that with you as time goes on, and I'm sure NDSU will be utilizing that in some of their programs. Here you can see the manure, and the manure is a good indicator of how they're doing. Look at how nice and flat that is, so you can see the protein's good. Things are going good. Your biology should be good in that field. This is a shot of winter grazing, and again, our goal is to never feed a bale of hay to a cow, but we got to be realistic. That only works once in a while, but some good nutrition, particularly under the snow. The green stuff's under there. And if you can, we have shown this, if we can get through most of the winter without feeding hay, it's a $200 per head savings for us. Guys, as you bring the next generation back, as you're trying to bring your profitability up, as you're trying to stay in business, that's huge. Doing good things for soil health and then saving that kind of money, that's a win-win. And yet most people are afraid to try it because it's challenging at times. Just another shot. And those cows will learn. We've spoiled our cows, and they don't know how to graze through snowbanks anymore because we like to run out with a tractor and bales and all that sort of stuff. And that's all fine and good when they need it, but when they don't need it, let's let them work for us. Those radish roots, it's fun to watch them. They'll pull them up, and they're 17 to 20% protein. So you got some good quality in there. They'll leave them lay, and then the next cow will come along, take a bite. So it's kind of fun to watch that whole process. Again, look at the quality. Look at the millet seeds in that cow patty there, and it's nice and flat. It's showing you the proteins up. When we test these things, we have never tested yet when we weren't hitting their requirements. Now, I'm not at that time of the year not hoping to put a ton of weight on them, but I don't want them to lose weight. And so, you can use this nutritional balancer or watch your cows, watch your body condition. And if you need to supplement, it's easy to do. And you can certainly go out there and do it. And the key is, and it's always hard for us cow guys, because if there's something out there to graze or hay, we always tend to want to utilize it, but you've got to feed the soil. Slap yourself twice and make sure you feed the soil. So, we try to leave 50%. Now that's subjective. If there's snow out there, what's 50%? But at some point you got to make a choice. Yeah, maybe we grazed enough off. We better save some for the soil. And it makes a huge difference as you move forward, building that soil health. We need a backup plan. This is a couple of years ago. We got 75 inches of snow in 3 weeks and 3 major blizzards. You've got to have a backup plan. We live in the northern plains. You've got to make sure these cattle are getting decent nutrition. So what we do now is we never bring those cows home though. We use portable windbreaks, big tree windbreaks. We either cube them out there, take hay out there, again, continue to build the soil health on the land, keep them out of the riparian area, keep them out of the corrals, and have to haul that manure back out where you started, which doesn't make sense. So again, it's all about soil health. And then the residue after grazing. Again, I said leave 50%. Look at the difference this will make with not running the water down the hill, but infiltrating it into the soil. We're keeping our evaporation down, as I talked about before. Soil surface is virtually 100% covered. You know, we still have to fudge and use some chemicals. In a perfect world, hopefully we won't. It'll help some of this cover. You can get by without it as many times or as often. Sometimes it works, but it's not a perfect world. So sometimes we have to fudge a bit yet. But it's building that biology back, and we're building our organic matter. And I'd like to make mention, because we test our biology every year, and when it works really good, the cattle on the land, lots of diversity in the forage, all that manure and urine, and our highest test has been 7,400 nanograms per gram of total biology in the soil. You've got all the fungi and all those other things working for you to bring that organic matter back. And that's huge. And I can't stress that enough, that it won't always be perfect like that. It bops around a little bit, but we always see an improvement when we're putting these cover crops on the land and you keep the cattle out there, and you see the increases in those things. Oh, I guess I've got the slide here. I didn't realize I had it in here, but that shows you, and it shows you the breakdown. I won't spend time on it, as you guys can study this at your leisure and look at it. It will show you those things. So, but this is what I want to show you, because many of the soil health folks would tell us that on these marginal sandier soils, it was hard to get worms back in the soil because it's too abrasive. But Jay Fear and I were out there in the spring, and we pulled these up, and I got a little excited about it. Look at the granulation in the soil, which tells you that you're going to be able to utilize the water, but look at the worms in it. And they said that was going to be hard, but those soils are easy to put a shovel in. And that's what we need to get to, guys. You start to see the difference it makes. And then again, you're right there ready to spring seed into it. If you want to go to a no-till right away into that residue. And this is what it looks like with a cash crop of corn on it, the residue on there, and that residue with an active biology in the soil will eat itself up pretty fast. And then I'd like to make one mention of something that's important, because folks, we're losing the battle of public perception. And when we do these things and we keep cattle out on the land, we keep them out of the corrals, we keep them out of the watersheds, we're saving costs, we're building our soil health, our quality of life hopefully is improving, and our profitability is going up. Then let's tell the story, because we've got to get the public back on our side, that we're not putting it all in the Missouri River and causing the problems in the Gulf of Mexico and all these things. This is huge for agriculture, and we've got to tell this story. When we do these positive things, tell the story. All right, and as I kind of wrap this up, I'm going to get into stacking enterprises. I talked about bringing the kids back. It's a big deal to me. I'm so excited to have them back. We still have our problems. It's a family. We don't always agree on everything, and those of you that are in family operations know that all too well. But we've got to work at that so that these places continue on. And this is all about improving our profitability and our quality of life. So what we've done here, we added another species. We got into the buffalo business. They fit on part of our place. We've added them. We do buffalo hunts. It fits into our hunting operation. I love them. They're a majestic animal. We also offer bison products in our meat business. So we'll see where that all goes, but it's been fun, and my youngest son absolutely loves them. So sometimes it's fun just to do something different. All right, we do custom grazing, and I mention this because folks, we have our own cow herd as well. Now, we could own all the cattle. We could custom graze all the cattle. I've got one boy that says, let's custom graze them all, because he doesn't like to calve any of them. And he says, then we have no risk. My youngest son, he's a cowboy. He wants to own them all. I'm in the middle. Let's diversify a little bit. Let's own part of them. Let's custom graze some. There's years when custom grazing would be the best answer. There's years when owning them all would be the best answer. In the middle, you don't have all your eggs in one basket. And we learn a lot of things, and it allows us some opportunity to do some things. We've developed some really good relationships with folks we're grazing with. I just offer it sometimes, and I've always very traditional until the last 25 years, I guess. I would have wanted to own them all, because that's what ranchers do. But you can do some stuff with this and not own them, and increase your profitability and not have to be married to the banker. So I throw it out there as an option. Agri-Tourism. This is a picture of our Grand Lodge on the ranch. That was a Sears and Roebuck kit house, was original ranch house after sod house and one other small house. Came in on a Sioux Line Railroad, which is now ghost town on the ranch, was quite a hub for livestock, and Lawrence Welk played dances there, all those sorts of things. But my boys have remodeled that place, made it into a fabulous Grand Lodge. It has a liquor license, has a commercial kitchen, and gives us an opportunity to do agri-tourism and all different kinds of events and tours and things. This is the inside set up for an event. Very beautiful facility now, and allows us to tell the positive story of agriculture. This is actually a wedding. We have the Copper Jewel barn, and I don't have an outside picture of it. We're in the process of doing some landscaping, but this is the inside. Again, my boys took an existing barn, added on to it, everything in there, the barbed wire lights, and they tore down another old barn for the wood. But this is a wedding and lots of cool events. It's the Copper Jewel barn. My grandfather's name was Jewel Sr. My dad's name was Jewel Jr. We had a contest, and some neighbors suggested the roof on this is copper colored, and so the Copper Jewel seemed to make sense. And I would have never thought of it, and it's such a cool name, and celebrates our heritage. So we're pretty proud of it. So this is kind of unique. In the guy that's got tears in his eyes, and his wife had their 25th anniversary. He bought his wife a 69 Mustang and had it shipped here, and it was so cool. The story is cool, and I know I'm getting a little long-winded maybe, but the story is so cool, because he didn't have the money when they got married to even afford a dinner, and he's been successful now, and he wanted to do something really cool, and he invited all of his friends, and we grilled steaks for him, and we hid this Mustang, and we drove it right into the barn. And as you can imagine, a 69 Mustang, boom, boom, boom. It was so cool. And everybody in there had teary eyes. It was just a special night, and fun to do stuff like that. So I've never used this in a presentation, and it gave you chills that night. So I just got to share it with you folks. We do a lot of soil health and grazing tours here. Always fun to see folks from around the country and share what we know. This is a group from Iowa, just some great folks there, and we do that when we can, and and tell the story. This was it was a national grassland policy tour. We had people from all over the country. We had the governor of North Dakota there, and lots of policy influencers there. And we got out on the grassland and just talked about the importance of the grassland and what we need to do to keep them alive and vibrant, and a lot of fun to do those sorts of things and tell folks and tell the story. This is my son Jay with a tour group here, and he's telling the story of coming back. He was in the corporate world and came back, and he's got a great story to tell, and it's fun to share all that and share the positive image of agriculture with folks. This is our meat logo, Black Leg Ranch Meats, both buffalo and beef. It's all grass finished. You know, I don't think it's right when we get one segment of the beef industry against the other. We're going to tell the positive side of grass finished meat, but I'm not going to badmouth anybody else's type of meat or anything else. It's all good, and all we do is confuse the consumer. But this is where we're at. This is our niche, and it's been growing quite rapidly. We are Audubon certified through their grazing program. Audubon, I like working with these groups, but there are some challenges at times when they get off and do some things that are a little bit different than those of us in the ranching and the ownership of land maybe agree with. So, but I think we need to work with them. We're stronger together. We just need to tell them how we feel and the importance of grazing land and how we as landowners feel. So I think that's all good, and we need to continue to work on that. But anyway, it's a sticker we can use and help folks know that what we do on this ranch through conservation is helping wildlife, helping all birds, from the little tiny ones to the great big ones. Just a shot of some grass finish beef here, and we do a good job. We really get our marbling back in the grass finish, and it's a great product. This is a shot of some rib steaks, some New York strips, and beef sirloin tip roast, and you can see it's good quality and a good eating experience. We do have our meat in the Bismarck Mandan Food Co-op. That's our brand, and that's we have several flavors of jerky on that rack there, and it's fun to work with them. There is a segment of the population that's very fast growing that wants to connect with agriculture and with a producer, and that's the opportunity for those of us that are wanting to get into this a bit. This is Jace cooking some steaks up for a group we had here. And then this Rolling Plains Adventures is our hunting outfitting business. This is 2 deer hooked together. And this was an F-18 carrier pilot that was here hunting. And Bo shot these. This is a crazy story because the deer on the top was half eaten by a coyote. So these 2 deer were fighting and hooked together. I can't imagine the one that was alive having the coyote eat the other one. Had to be a little bit of a crazy experience for that deer, but it's a beautiful shot. And this guy was so cool because he was an F-18 carrier pilot, and so many great stories, and it's so fun to honor our vets and visit with them. So we create a lot of habitat here on the ranch for wildlife, and that's fun. This is the Grand Lodge, and some pheasant hunters having a great hunt. And then we have the Black Leg Brewery. My middle son, Jay, worked for Anheuser-Busch and had a dream to start a microbrew in the back of the barn. And so we'll see where that goes. It does add ambience for events when you have your own brewery. And the pandemic really affected that, of course, and hopefully that comes back over time. But it's been interesting. It's quite a little facility and a lot of work, but fun to watch for me to see where it all goes. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed my presentation here today. It's a little tiny snapshot. It was hard to get into too much in depth on things. And like I said, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. It's been a trying year for lots of folks. I appreciate that. We've had our issues here as well. I'm looking forward to 2021. Regardless of what happens, you know, the whole regenerative movement is exciting. I think we're making some huge strides in showing the public that we in agriculture are great stewards of the land, and we can bring these natural resources back. We can be part of the, you know, this, you can argue climate change all day long, but regardless, we can be part of that solution to protect the climate, because we're the ones that are sequestering carbon, and we're the ones that are putting a good, wholesome protein product on the table, as well as many other ag products for the consumer. And they need to know that they can feel good about agriculture, particularly this regenerative movement. And it's an exciting time. And I think those of us involved of it, we are the future. And my hat's off to the No-Till Association in South Dakota for all the work they do. And my kids give me crap when I say this, but I'm just tickled pink to be a part of it.